Sasha, good morning. Thank you very much for making it through. What are these three components that will help improve or that need change before the NHI bill becomes law?
Well, the first one relates to governance. The way that the bill is currently structured, there's a lot of centralization of decision-making power, appointment power and removal power in the Minister of Health. And while there's no need to cast aspersions on the Minister of Health, any kind of centralization of power is a problem, and it really needs to be decentralized to ensure the appropriate checks and balances in relation to the NHI fund.
Decentralizing, that means you give provinces their own powers as well, am I right?
Not necessarily. What it means is that the power to appoint the board of the NHI fund should be beyond the minister. And at the moment it's very centralized in the minister. So we've made some proposals about opening up that process, making it more transparent, ensuring that everyone can see the nominations for the board positions and who's made those nominations, and can see the interview process, so that we can really see who's going into this board, to try and prevent some of the problems that can happen when there's a board operating behind closed doors.
So decentralizing power is one component. Second one?
The second one is linked, and that relates to transparency. It's really important that all contracts and information and decisions taken by the NHI fund, which will of course in the end be the holder of all health funding in the country, is visible to people in South Africa.
Are you saying that the process is not transparent at the moment, or the proposals as they are?
As is provided for in the bill, there aren't clear requirements of transparency, that contracts and decisions and minutes be published. And our proposal is that that be made very clear, so that it is open to the public for scrutiny.
Third element?
The third one is about testing interventions before you implement them. So there are a number of structures established by the NHI bill that we haven't tried before. And the way that health system change happens is an iterative process, and there's no need to legislate structures that may very well change, that may not be required, that may need to be different. What we've proposed instead is that we build into the bill a process for making decisions about structures, a process for testing out different interventions, so that we are not trying to legislate from the top at the beginning, not knowing what will be needed for a health system in 5, 10, 20 years' time.
The test driving process, so how does it apply to the ordinary member on the street who needs medical help? Would they also get a chance to test drive the system?
I think it's about participation of people in the process of testing the system. So, for example, it's not to say that there must be no implementation now. What it is to say is that structures like the contracting unit for primary care, which is given important powers in the bill, but we're not really sure how it'll work. It's trying out those kinds of structures, allowing structures that are currently in place to perform those roles in the interim, and seeing what works, so that we're not imposing a completely new way of structuring the health system without knowing whether it'll work, and without knowing whether it'll work for people accessing healthcare services.
Deadline for inputs from the public is fast approaching. We've seen the committee moving around the 9 provinces, and I think the next province is KZN, if I'm not mistaken. How eager are people to contribute to this process, and have you been following, is there zest to try and give input, and are people genuinely interested? Because I'll tell you why I'm asking this. There was a report in Mpumalanga that someone just walked into a health facility and shot a patient dead. You can't have things like that and still expect people to have confidence in the public healthcare system.
Absolutely. I think there is a zest to make input, but there is also a real lack of understanding of what these proposals actually are. There's a lot of rhetoric. And so there's a need for, I think, the department and for Parliament to take the people of South Africa into their confidence, to discuss in real terms what this NHI bill means, and to allow for a real public participation process. There's been this roadshow happening across the country, and what we've seen is a lot of political speak with within these public participation processes. So we've been working with the Treatment Action Campaign to try and talk to people about what this NHI bill means so that they are able to make input to the bill, which we can then incorporate into our written submissions. But we're also encouraging people to make direct submissions to Parliament. It's important that South Africans are heard on a bill that will fundamentally change the way that everybody accesses healthcare services in the country.
Sasha Stevenson, thank you very much for making the time to speak to us here on The First Take. She is an attorney with Section 27.